It all begins with a biography of the prominent people of the continent of Lanoa. Specifically, page 877 discusses the greatest of all who ever lived on the continent. Human opinion has bestowed many epithets upon him. However, everyone agreed on one thing, that this man was the most famous and renowned. Everyone around him loved and respected him. He was a star. This man was the most distinguished spiritual magician and an unrivaled strategist. He became the foundation of the success of everything that existed in the world at that time. And in fact, this person was the daughter of the Arton family. Not only the enlightened rulers of the human empire bowed their heads before this girl, but also demons. Even the spirits of the world listened to the girl and respected her. Her entire path was strewn with flowers, and her footsteps were achievements that all the people around her deeply revered and could not get enough of. But this remarkable girl actually wanted simple, ordinary things, just like everyone else. Deep down, she just wanted to love and be happy with the man she loved. Rumors said that she had a very strong connection with a man who was always by her side. To some extent, one could say that the girl achieved what she wanted so much. It was the simple desire of an ordinary girl. And the story began the following time. A girl from our world dies. Before her death, she recalls her entire life story. Her parents died early, so she was taken in by relatives. Life with them could not be called life. It was simply torture. She was often beaten. Hiding from creditors was a regular occurrence for her. The only thing that saved her was her education. She tried in every way to achieve a better life and escape from her relatives who tormented her. She was not afraid that her life was not like a blossoming alley, but rather a path through the desert. She tried to believe that she would live her life honestly and with dignity, and she would not be ashamed of how she did it. In fact, she only wanted peace. But the moment of death frightened the girl very much. She couldn't understand where she was. The first thing that came to mind was that she had ended up in the afterlife. The girl wondered where she had ended up. Was it heaven or hell? She leaned toward the latter because she had died without paying off her entire loan. But it seemed wrong to think about that at a time like this. The man standing in front of her said that it was definitely not hell. The girl wondered who this man was. He was clearly not an ordinary man, but she imagined God differently. Then where could she be? The man said that the girl was an unusual person because his energy had no effect on her. The frightened girl said that she had always been praised for her intelligence. The man assured her that this was not the case. He had never met a person who had tried to save a spirit and drowned because of it. The girl remembered seeing the silhouette of a girl who seemed to be made of water before she died. The stranger explained that this spirit had managed to break through the gate he had opened into their world. And so the girl saw the creature, thinking it was a girl who was drowning. And so she died. An accident brought the water spirit and the girl together, and the mortal, not knowing what to do, rushed to help the drowning girl. And so she died. The girl realized that she had died trying to save the water spirit. And although it seemed very strange, the girl herself did not consider it a meaningless and stupid death. There was nothing in this world that she could regret. She was so sure that she had done the right thing. The stranger was surprised when he heard her thoughts. He couldn't believe that the girl had asked if the water spirit was okay. It just didn't fit into his head. The man replied that nothing terrible had happened. Spirits, according to him, could not live where no one believed in them, and to give up their dimension meant a slow and terrible death for them. And in the human world, fewer and fewer people believed in spirits, and only the poor girl, when she saw the water spirit, rushed to its aid. Without even thinking, she risked her life, and in doing so, she believed. And thanks to this, the spirit was able to survive. The stranger thanked the girl. It was a pity that she had lost her life in the process. The girl replied that she had lost nothing, but the man stopped her and said that it was not fair. Spirits always gave as much as they took. It was difficult to accuse them of taking too much. And since she had lost her life saving a young spirit, she should get a new life. The spirits were going to give her a new life. The girl asked if she could really be reborn as someone else. The stranger said yes, but she would forget her previous life. The girl was filled with gratitude to her savior. She said that she had never asked God for anything, but now she had a unique opportunity to beg to finally be surrounded by loving people. But if that was impossible, she would rather just die and not have the opportunity to be reborn in the next life. The man assured her that she should not ask for such a thing because everything would be fine. The stranger said that she was worthy of love in any case, just like everyone else. The only thing separating them was self-love and narcissism, which was now permeating everything. People were to blame for their own problems. Hugo von Artina was talking to his son Cedric. The boy asked his father to rest because the doctor had promised that his mother would be fine. The Duke assured his son that he was feeling fine. Cedric said that something was bothering him. The boy understood that his father was having a hard time because his wife had gone into labor 7 hours ago and there had been no sound of a baby crying for a long time. The birth was complicated. The doctor and nurses emphasized that the young Duchess would be fine. Her life was not in danger. But the Duke was worried about his wife and future child. Suddenly, a cry rang out. Like thunder from a clear sky, the baby cried out. Alicia Artina called her husband. Both were very happy about the arrival of another child. As they both wanted, they had a girl. The Duke was delighted. Everyone around them cried with happiness. The parents promised that even in the most difficult times, they would be there for her. They had waited so long for this child, and so they were overjoyed at her arrival. Promises of loyalty poured in from all sides. The father said that he would cover her entire path in life with flowers, even if it meant cutting all the flowers in the world. The parents thanked the girl for coming to them. The child was truly gifted with the respect and love of everyone around her. No one suspected that this girl had been sent to them from the spirit world and had been reborn after death. The girl was already in her parents' house. She looked at the toys hanging above her, but it was very boring for her. She couldn't just lie there and look up at the toys. The maids around her wondered why the child was making such strange noises. They were afraid that she was in pain. None of them had any idea what to do with the Duchess's child. They both agreed that it was time for her to sleep. The girl was tired of lying around, sleeping, eating, and going to the potty all the time. She remembered the words of the stranger from the spirit world, who said that with each day of her new life, her memories would fade. The words about the unity of body and mind were true. With each passing day, her memories and thoughts of her past life became more fragile and more like a dream. The girl was becoming an ordinary child. Every day was like the one before, but that was even better. She was supposed to be just like a normal child. Besides, everyone around her loved and cared for her. Cedric often came into his sister's room. It made him a little nervous that she was asleep. The maid said that she had recently eaten and was just taking a nap, as little children do. The young descendant of the Duke asked the servants not to tell his parents about his frequent visits. He was supposed to be at fencing lessons. Instead, he was very interested in seeing his little sister. The girl was surprised that Cedric had decided to skip fencing lessons for her sake. But it was worth it to show herself as a very cute little child just once. After all, her brother wanted to see her. The girl smiled, and the maids saw it. They exclaimed that their charge was the sweetest and most beautiful child in the world. They asked the little one to smile one more time. From the maids, Eva learned about the Duke's family. One of the maids said that the master and his 2 sons wore bracelets made of ordinary thread. Another said that the Duke valued this bracelet very much. As soon as he received it, he immediately refused to spar with his knights. Hugo was worried that the bracelet might break. This was the result of gossip and bad customs that prevailed in the duchy. There was a superstition among the people that if you wore a bracelet made of very thin thread and made sure it didn't break, you would definitely have a very beautiful daughter. And since the Duke was eagerly awaiting the birth of a daughter, perhaps there was some truth to the superstition. The eldest son, Arkan, had gone north at that time. There he was to fulfill the duties of the Duke's heir. Everyone was happy that little Ava already had such protectors. Many ladies from the capital were interested in her brothers, and the boys became the object of curiosity of all the beautiful women around them, their potential brides. The little girl was very lucky. Both boys showed a strong character and preferred discipline and strict rules, which distinguished them from other aristocrats. Each of them was a good candidate for the ducal title. The girl listened to all these conversations and understood that she was the only one lucky enough to be born into such a family, as she would have to follow the rules and, in the future, have a duty to someone in terms of self-sacrifice. The heroine believed that although she did not want a life that would blossom like a garden, she did not want to be born into an aristocratic family where she would be the center of attention. She would rather give it up. Later that day, the Duke's eldest son, Arkan, arrived at the estate. He greeted his parents and obediently talked about his own affairs and circumstances. His mother was delighted to see her son return. Arkan asked if anything unusual had happened recently. His parents said that things were not quite the same as when he had left. The young aristocrat asked if anyone had attacked them or why his father was so upset. His father assured him that Arkin's little sister was very sweet. She looked a lot like her mother, and when she laughed, she was very cute. Recently, she had said the word papa, although her first word was mama. The woman said that their little daughter could not speak yet. Arkin did not understand what had happened during the 8 months he had been away from his parents' home. His father told him to go to his sister. The young man asked if it was appropriate to do so before he had reported on his administrative affairs. But the Duke said that family matters came first. Arkin was not used to putting personal matters above state affairs. Cedric approached them. Arkin asked his younger brother about his affairs. He replied that everything was fine, and only then did the elder brother see that Cedric was holding a small bundle in his hands. The younger brother asked if Eva was not beautiful. The girl saw that she was not making the right impression on the Duke's eldest son. She decided to use a secret trick and sweetly raised her hand, trying to reach her little brother. The younger brother, who was holding the girl in his arms, asked his older brother if he would go to his sister. But when he replied that he had business with his father, Cedric assured him that he and his sister would wait. Arkin noticed how uncomfortable his younger brother and sister were. He said he was willing to wait with his state affairs, but his face did not show the delight that a small child usually inspires. The family sat at the table, and the father asked those present if they thought the little girl was different from how she had been yesterday. Today, she was even more charming than yesterday. Everyone except Arkin tried to pick her up. Cedric said that his father was busy with government affairs, so he was willing to hold his sister. But Arkin said that his brother was too young to hold Eva, and he would take his place. The little girl did not want to eat what she was given. She handed the food to her father. Everyone was impressed by her behavior. They thought that the child wanted to treat her father. Those present wondered who she really wanted to treat. The girl was getting ready to eat a berry her mother had given her. She wanted her life to continue as it was. She was satisfied with almost everything in her life. All that was left was to enjoy it. The Duke took his daughter in his arms. He told her that they had been invited to the Emperor's court that day. The girl really did not want to travel anywhere again. She felt uncomfortable doing so in this body. The Emperor, whose name was Carlyle Regulus Arcadius, stood in his chambers looking at a letter that had recently arrived. The maid reported that the Duke had arrived with his family. His Majesty ordered them to be admitted. The Duke greeted His Majesty and assured him that the Emperor was still a shining sun for the entire empire. The ruler was impressed by the Duke's appearance. He was, as always, perfectly dressed and carried himself with dignity. The ruler rose from his chair. He said that there was no one else in the room but the two of them, so there was no need for formalities. His Majesty offered him some citrus fruits brought from distant lands. The Duke asked if he could ask His Majesty for something. The Emperor assured him that a man who knew almost no worries could ask him for anything he wanted, and everything that the Emperor could allow him to have. The Duke asked permission to rent the banquet hall of the imperial court for a certain evening. His Majesty asked why the Duke needed it. The Duke repeated his request. The Emperor reminded him that the hall had been used for only 2 things for centuries, to celebrate holidays of national importance and the Emperor's birthday. So he was curious to know why the Duke needed the hall. The Emperor replied that everyone understood very well whose glorious family bore the heavy burden of governing the empire. Therefore, none of the aristocrats would object to him renting the hall for the evening. His Majesty was very pleased that his most loyal vassal had asked him to give him the hall for a celebration. The only thing more amusing and interesting was the love between the demon and the spirit. It was intriguing. The Emperor asked if Arkin had decided to marry someone. The Duke asked why he needed to rent a hall for someone else's wedding. He had a more important reason for such a serious request. He could use the hall in his own castle for this purpose. But it was his daughter's birthday in a month. That was why he needed to rent a hall for the celebration. His Majesty was surprised. After all, the Duke was not planning to celebrate a wedding or any anniversary or jubilee. The imperial ballroom was needed to celebrate a child's birthday. But the Duke interrupted the Emperor. He asked to use the hall one more time. This would happen when his daughter decided to make her debut in society. The Emperor stopped him, but the Duke was already on his way home. Ava was asleep. She was dreaming about a stranger. It was so warm and the breeze was so pleasant that she felt completely content. The man asked her to call him when she woke up. He would be waiting for her. Ava woke up to find Arkin standing over her. The girl tried to remember her strange dream, but she couldn't make sense of it. Her memories of her past life and all the events were fading with each passing day. Arkin told her she had slept enough. Today was going to be an unusual day, so she had almost no chance of getting any more sleep. Her brother congratulated her on her birthday. He was proud to be the first to congratulate his little sister. He told her how he woke up early on purpose to come see her. A little later, the girl was standing in a dress that her mother had ordered from the best craftsman in the empire. Everyone around her looked at her with admiration. Cedric looked at his sister and thought that he needed to practice fencing more. After all, in the future, he would have to fight many duels for his sister's honor against various nobles and ruffians. The family gathered for the ball. The boy thought that his family looked very beautiful, and his younger sister stood out the most among them all. Their father couldn't take his eyes off her. He asked the girl if he was the first to wish her a happy birthday. When she said that Cedric was the first, the Duke said that he had prepared the main gift for her. He lifted his daughter up in his arms and said that they were going to celebrate her birthday in the Imperial Hall. The girl was not very happy about going to the hall. After all, it was her birthday. She really wanted a quiet, peaceful life. But she was being dragged to the Imperial Court against her will. In her mind, Ava begged someone to calm her family down. The Duchess asked her husband if he had ordered a new carriage. Hugo replied that he had used all kinds of magic to drive away insects and protect the carriage from rain and heat. Finally, the Duke's family reached the palace. Everyone present looked at the girl with curiosity. Without making a fuss, the guests agreed that Ava was an extremely beautiful child, very sweet and funny. The Duke was pleased with the impression she made. Some noticed that the girl's hair was as golden as the Duke's. This made the man even more proud of his child. Those present predicted a great future for the little girl. An unfamiliar man said that although Eva was a very sweet and beautiful child, it was not necessary to use the throne room of the imperial court for this. His words betrayed his envy. Some agreed with him. The place where Eva was to sit was arranged so that His Majesty the Emperor himself could sit there and rest. Even for the family of Duke Arton, this was too much. The butler asked for silence. He announced that the formal part of the event was about to begin. The Duke and his family would greet everyone present and would have the opportunity to respond to all the wishes. Silence reigned. No one knew what to say. The silence was broken by the announcement that His Majesty the Emperor had arrived. The man asked everyone to ignore him. The Emperor said that there was no need to focus so much attention on him. He was just nearby and decided to come in and see how things were going. At the same time, he wanted to congratulate his best friend on the birth of his daughter. His Majesty asked the Duke if he planned to remain silent, since he was the organizer of the celebration. Hugo said that he was very grateful to the Emperor for his visit, his congratulations, and his permission to hold the celebration in this place. Secondly, he was going to thank the guests who, by their presence, had agreed to show respect for his family and wish them all the best. The Duke was confident about his daughter's future. Finally, Hugo said that he sincerely hoped that no one would dare to stand in the way of his daughter and the entire Artina family, who defended the borders of the empire with their own blood. The Emperor praised his friend. He was impressed by his strength of character and the power of his words and promises. His Majesty would always stand by the glorious Arthena family. The guests said that it was a great honor to be present at such a celebration. One of the men present said that during his travels through the Harvant Empire, he had found a very valuable piece of jewelry that was unlike anything else in the world. No one had ever seen anything like it. They also presented a tiara that contained ancient, powerful magic. This was followed by praise for the child who had started this celebration. Everyone agreed that Ava looked very much like her mother. The Duke thanked him. He asked if the man was Count Czerny, but no one paid any attention to these words. Everyone was thinking about how much Ava's daughter looked like her mother. They were almost identical. The girl got bored. She thought that the adults were making too much noise, and they were talking about completely irrelevant things. She wanted it all to end quickly. Marquis Lucius de Font arrived at the party. He congratulated the Duke's entire family on the birth of their charming daughter. The Marquis emphasized that he and Hugo had not seen each other for a long time. Ava did not like the old man. The Marquis asked for forgiveness, as it was his duty to visit the Duke's estate in person to congratulate him on the birth of his daughter. But his business prevented him from making such a visit. The Duke assured him that there was no need to apologize. They had not been receiving guests lately anyway, so the Marquis would have wasted his time. There was tension between the men. The old Marquis emphasized that there was talk in the capital about Marquis Cassis's visit to the Duke, But surely this was just another capital lie intended to cause a rift between Lucius and the Duke. The Duke replied that there was no point in talking about Marquis Cassis's visit. After all, the Duke's family only received welcome guests. Anyone who came uninvited was sent away with best wishes by the butler. Cedric realized that the atmosphere was heating up. He decided to take Eva and go with her to another room so that the girl would not be nervous. The Duke's eldest son joined his sister. The younger son asked his brother why their father was behaving so strangely toward the Marquis. Usually, the Duke was a very friendly and hospitable host at his parties. Arthon said that the Emperor's wife had died a year ago. The current crown prince was the next in line for the throne. A year ago, when the Empress died of a severe illness, all power passed to the Emperor's concubine, Banaki. Rebellious thoughts prevailed in the highest circles of the aristocracy. Many wanted to put Prince Edwin on the throne, bypassing the legitimate heir, and recently the situation has become very tense. The crown prince still has a chance to become emperor. Everyone can see that he has the qualities of a natural emperor and ruler of the country. But he is hindered by the absence of relatives who could prove his claim to the imperial throne. And for the prince, everything could end fatally. The Marquis de Font uses the situation to get closer to the crown prince. And when the prince takes the throne, the old Marquis will become his favorite. Then he can take the place of the Duke. And that could be a disaster. That is why he has such a tense relationship with their father. The girl watched everything that was happening around her closely. Suddenly, she noticed that her eyesight was deteriorating. But this could not happen at such a young age. Energy swirled around the girl. She couldn't understand what was happening. Someone said that she had the mark of the Lord. And she was the only living creature who had the mark of the Lord. This meant that she was in his favor. Ava realized that a spirit was talking to her. The creature said that thanks to the Lord's gift, the girl could understand their language. Even though they hadn't made a deal, Eva's energy was pure, just like the Lord's. The spirits enjoyed being around the girl. The atmosphere was pleasant and fresh. In this, she reminded them of the Lord. The girl asked who the Lord was. The spirit said that it was thanks to the Lord that they existed. Ava remembered the man who had given her a second life. She realized that it was the stranger who had caused all these spirits to appear. He ensured their safety and very existence. Vladika ruled all the waters of the worlds. The spirit offered to make a deal with them. The girl did not understand what kind of deal he was talking about. The creature said that they had been waiting a long time for the girl's body to be ready to fulfill the agreement. From now on, the spirits promised to protect her. The girl asked how such tiny creatures could protect her. In her opinion, they would need help themselves. After all, they looked like small fish that could be caught with a fishing rod. And then she realized that she would become their protector, and they would not make a deal. On the contrary, they would become friends. The spirit said that the legends were true. The creature asked her to repeat after her, but Eva said that she did not know how to speak yet. That was her problem. The spirit calmed the girl down. The creature simply asked her to think about the words of the agreement. Heaven and earth, fire and water, on that side of the scales where the foundations of the entire universe stand, the lonely soul of the girl was lost. She asked to become her companion. In return, she promised to become his companion and give him her soul. Since water is the foundation of all things, it was only natural to become a companion. The very essence of water was filled with energy, and therefore could become a sword and a shield. The girl returned to the Emperor's Hall and her family. She was worried about how they would react to her agreement with the spirits. For now, she had to keep it all a secret. But suddenly, she noticed the silence that had fallen around her. Ava thought about what had happened while she was away from the hall. There was no trace of the solemn atmosphere. Her mother and father behaved as if nothing had happened. But it was very fake. A special mark could be seen on the foreheads of spiritual people and magicians. Only spirits could see this mark. It was especially noticeable during the first contact between a spirit and a human. That was when it was most visible when an agreement was made. The mark on the forehead glowed brightly for a very short time. This was the only moment when an ordinary person could see the magical seal. This was enough to find one's way in the world of spirits. Cedric and Arkan held the girl tightly. They seemed to be trying to protect her from those present. Eva realized that something had happened that caused panic and confusion among the guests. Her brothers would not let anyone hurt her. The younger brother shouted that the guests had no right to look at his sister like that. They weren't even allowed to raise their eyes. Only then did they ask the little girl how she was feeling. She couldn't give a clear answer. The Duke couldn't believe that his daughter had received the seal of the spirits. She was too young for that. She was only 1 year old, but everyone around him was saying that she had indeed received the seal. The emperor asked for a moment of silence. He said that not everything was so clear-cut. The flash and mark on the forehead of the little daughter of the Athena family did not necessarily have to be a magical mark. Besides, she certainly could not have made a deal with the spirits. This was definitely beyond the child's capabilities. That was what he and most of the aristocrats present thought. The emperor asked the Duke if there were any other such signs in the Duke's family. The Duke said that this had not happened for a very long time. His Majesty said that in this way, the spirits were blessing the entire empire. He asked to hold Eva in his arms. The brothers were clearly against it, but they could not refuse the emperor's request. The Duke asked how His Majesty was feeling. After all, not everyone present had accepted his words. And to some extent, the man had discredited himself in the eyes of the aristocracy, which was not entirely sympathetic towards him. The emperor reacted very harshly. He asked the Duke if he really thought that His Majesty was not himself. He told everyone that neighboring countries were saying that the protection of the spirits had left their empire. Such talk could not be allowed. After all, if the neighbors became convinced of this, they might decide to wage war on the weak. And then the empire would be forced to wage a war that could end in its destruction. The brothers did not give up. They still hid their sister from the ruler himself. They could not disobey his order. The girl could not understand what had happened and how she should behave with this man. Suddenly, she realized that the emperor was supposed to rule her father, and the welfare of their family depended on this. This was very important in her new world. Therefore, it was not worth neglecting such a source. The girl asked the emperor to take her in his arms. The man was overjoyed. He did not expect that this action was a cleverly planned act aimed at preserving the welfare of her family. The emperor was delighted with the girl. He was sure that Eva had recognized her father's best friend. His Majesty thanked the girl. Although she herself did not understand what an important thing she had done, she did not need to. The main thing was that the desired effect had been achieved. The emperor asked the little girl if she would help his princess save the future of the state. All this caused great and deep anger in the old marquis. His Majesty asked if everyone had seen the sign. The man said that finally, after many years of absence, a magician had been born in their country. Now they had someone who could communicate with the spirits of nature and help the state. All the inhabitants of the empire had to know about this. The next day, His Majesty promised to organize a 3-day festival in honor of the birth of the spiritual magician. Everyone around, regardless of political orientation, rejoiced at the appearance of the long-awaited magician. The Duke and his wife had been watching the celebrations in honor of the birth of the spirit magician, who was their own daughter, for 3 days. But the Duke himself remembered the war with the demons. The scars from it were still quite fresh. Even children in the empire knew that a spirit magician was the complete opposite of a demon. And so the appearance of a spirit magician was a good sign for the safety of the entire empire. It was a very significant event for the whole country. The woman noticed the uneasiness on her husband's face. The Duke assured her that he was only concerned about whether he would be able to protect his daughter from anyone who would try to harm her, the spirit mage. She had become a target for demonic forces. Her daughter's powers and abilities were revealed in the banquet hall before everyone present. Now, almost all the aristocratic families know about Ava, and many will want to remove such an opponent from the country's political game. Their daughter was not just a very beautiful child. She also possessed extraordinary powers. It seemed as if all the capital spies should have their tongues and eyes torn out. The mother suggested assigning knights as bodyguards to her daughter. Otherwise, the brainless rabble might do something bad to their daughter. The Duke couldn't believe that anyone would try to harm his daughter. But in the end, he agreed to his wife's suggestion. He decided that it was worth calling on the people he had tried to forget. It seemed that the parents were very reluctant to resort to the services of knights. The young man who hunted monsters turned to his friend. He told him that a group of knights was being selected to serve as bodyguards for the young daughter of the Duke of Artina. It was Harold, a knight of Artina. His friend Twain was also one of the knights who served the Artin family faithfully. The young man said that he had refused such an honor. Harold said that hard times were coming for them. After all, their enemies were becoming fewer and fewer. His friend agreed, but he thought that life in the capital was boring. They were used to constant tension and battle. Although people said that the little girl looked very much like the Duchess, who was considered a true beauty. Another knight joined them. His name was Alec, and he suggested that they give their mistress a gift. He picked up the head of the monster they had just killed and said that if it was dried, it would make a beautiful ornament. The Knights of Artina were considered such strong opponents that even the imperial court did not have such strength. They had no equals in the entire empire. Instead of the peace of the capital, they preferred constant struggle with demons. However, this was not what made them famous. The Duke of Artina himself drove them north to fight the demon invasion. The conditions were right for this. The knights had become dangerous to those around them. It was a necessary measure. The knights hated everything about the country's past. They thoughtlessly destroyed everything related to the old regime. However, their main purpose was to fight the higher demons. This was the opinion of all the ordinary inhabitants of the empire, and not without reason, by the way. Among all the military units of the state, there was no formation as bloody and dangerous as the Knights of the Arthina family. They were feared, but also respected. The knights arrived at the palace of the Artin family. They were greeted by the butler, who spoke on behalf of the master. But the warriors stopped him. The knights knew the butler and were surprised that he had not changed over the years. Caldel replied that he was glad to see them. One of the old comrades noticed Caldel's eyes. They asked if he had a girlfriend. His gaze suggested that he had been abandoned by a woman. The steward asked God for patience and strength. 10 years ago, he had been transferred from the knights to the butlers, and he did not want his past questionable deeds to jeopardize his present and future. The knights did not lag behind their former comrade in arms. The knights were not used to life in peaceful cities. They immediately began to think about dinner. One of the knights suggested hunting a small horse they had seen on the way to the castle, but his companions protested. They did not consider it illegal or something that was not done in cities. They were frightened by the fact that the Duchess herself bred horses and therefore protected them all, and killing a small foal could lead to a scandal. The butler understood that he was now responsible for controlling the actions of his former brothers-in-arms. He wondered why his master had recalled these ignoramuses from the far north, where they should have continued to fight demonic forces. The girl ran up to Hadiel. She did not immediately notice the knights, so she asked the steward if he had heard a suspicious squeak. When her attention was drawn to the group of knights, she immediately became interested in them. Hamel asked her to stay away from these knights, whom he almost called cutthroats. The butler explained that the knights had sworn allegiance to the Duke and now served his family. The girl stared at the knights with wide eyes. One of the knights introduced himself as Twain and said he would become her personal bodyguard. But the men began to compete with each other for the attention of the Duke's daughter. Each boasted of his skills, but Eva's main priority was the ability to tell stories. It was such a master, not a master of the sword, that the girl agreed to give preference to if she had to choose. Although one of them even offered her a dried orc's head, the knights began to quarrel among themselves, pointing out each other's shortcomings. They did not notice that Eva had moved away from their group. She thought it was too noisy there, and her father would appoint her personal bodyguard anyway. Later, the girl approached one of the knights and gave him a berry she had picked in the garden. At that moment, the soldier was thinking that his campaigns in the north were coming to an end. He had spent almost his entire life in those regions, fighting evil. The Duke himself approached the group of knights. He was glad that his loyal knights had arrived at the castle. The nobleman thanked them for their loyal service and help in the war against the demons and their followers. However, he asked them to report on the latest events. The knights bowed their heads before their commander. It was an honor for them to serve Duke Ostana himself. But suddenly, they heard a squeak. The Duke could not have made such a sound, so there was only one thing left to do. The Duke's young daughter approached the knights. All the men's attention instantly shifted to the girl. The Duke tried to shout to the warriors, who had forgotten what discipline was. But the guards wanted to hear the girl again. The butler thought about what was about to happen. After all, only one person could be chosen as the personal guard. Therefore, a fight was about to begin, as there was no other way out. Exactly 1 month later, the knights were training on the grounds near the Duke's palace. The girl entered the training ground and ordered a break in the training. One of the guards asked what the girl was doing there. Ava opened the bag she always took with her on long trips. Treats began to fall out of the bag. The knights thought that the contents of the bag were not very suitable for an adventure. It looked more like a regular picnic. But the men were forced to say that their commander's daughter had prepared very well. They were compelled to do so because they all loved the little girl. Eva had packed her bag correctly. After all, the knights were going to take everything else anyway. The dwarf approached the group. He said that the little sister still couldn't travel alone, even in the presence of knights who were training their skills in the north of the country. The girl was delighted that there were more and more of them. The knights, in turn, said that they were ready to go and catch even the Demon King for the princess. The girl was interested and frightened at the same time. But before that, one of the guards asked her to listen to a tale about the adventures of their squad. But the Duke interrupted the story. He told his knights that they should not fill his daughter's head with nonsense. It would be better for them to return to their training on the training ground. After all, you never know where danger lurks. The soldiers decided to joke around. They said that the Duke hadn't noticed how a leaf had attacked the young princess. Everyone laughed, and the father was faced with the question of who to make his daughter's personal bodyguard. The question of which of the knights would be worthy of continuing to protect the Duke's daughter remained open. Suddenly, the girl herself said that she would make the decision, or influence it. The girl approached the youngest of the knights in the silence and took him by the hands. Eva said that he would protect her from evildoers and keep her safe. The boy was as surprised as the others. The two boys stood in the palace room. Everything around them was bathed in moonlight. The fair-haired boy asked how the black-haired boy was feeling. He replied that everything was fine, but he had a bad feeling. His partner said that he was still very young. But there was a positive side to this, namely that there was room for further growth. The blonde-haired man asked him to take care of Eva. The father asked the guard not to break his promise. The knight ran through the night forest. He lost his footing and fell. A crowd of men stood before him. One of them turned to the knight and told him that killing little children must be very difficult. But why did he think he could escape? Besides, killing a child was not his personal whim, but an order. Orders, as we know, are not to be discussed. The men said in unison that they had treated the orphan well, and that he had wanted to betray them. The next memory was of the Duke. He stood in front of the boy and held a sword in his hands, with which he had probably driven away the boy's companions. The aristocrat said that he could forgive the boy and give him another chance to redeem himself. Now the boy had become a knight and had the opportunity to become the personal bodyguard of the Duke's daughter. The kindness and generosity of Duke Go gave him the opportunity to become a normal, respected member of society. And instead of becoming a simple hired killer, as was his destiny, he became a soldier of the Empire, its defender. He fought demons and all their minions, so he could be proud of his status. The knight considered the Duke his personal god. Such was his power and influence. Therefore, without hesitation, he swore allegiance to Eva. His sword and soul belonged entirely to the little lady. Eva was awakened by her brother. He said it was too late to sleep. The sun was high in the sky and calling everyone to their daily chores and games. The girl was sleepy and argued with the boy, trying to win a little more time to sleep. The boy said that only little children lie in bed so long every morning. The girl wanted to say something back, but just then a knight entered the room. The guard said that the girl had recently boasted that she was a grown woman. The girl had mixed feelings about her little brother. She asked Cedric to teach her how to fight. But later, Eva asked her brother to carry her. Cedric joked that she had recently been talking about how grown up she was. The girl explained that in the morning she was little, but in the evening she was already grown up. And now it was morning, so she had to say that she was still very little and had the right to be capricious. Everyone around her pinched her cheeks and talked about how little she was. The girl was holding an envelope in her hands. She couldn't understand what it was or how it had ended up in her hands. Her brothers exchanged mysterious glances. Inside was an invitation addressed to Evelyn von Artina. The girl rushed at the knight who had been assigned to guard her. The man was frightened by the sudden attack. At that moment, Eva showed him the invitation with her name on it. The knight recognized that it was an invitation from the Marquis of Cassis. The knight said that the Cassi family had been famous for many magicians since ancient times. They were very powerful and served as a reliable support for the ruling dynasty. For this, they always enjoyed all kinds of privileges. The current Marquis Cassis was a loyal comrade-in-arms of the present emperor. The Marquis was also on very good terms with the Duke himself. They had all gone through various trials together, and their friendship had been forged there. Harold decided to joke with his mistress. He asked Eva who he would play with when she left. The girl replied very seriously that the knight was already an adult, and it was not fitting for him to behave in such a manner. She stamped her foot menacingly, adding that he was old enough to play by himself without help. Eva waited for Gerald to grow up. The man was upset when he realized that the girl had scolded him. A few days later, Eva and her parents set off on their journey. They planned to visit an old friend of the Duke, the Marquis of Cassis. The knight said goodbye to the girl. Eva promised to return soon, but the herald asked her to show everyone what they had learned together recently. The girl said that she remembered everything and was ready to repeat it. The guard asked what she was going to do when the demon attacked. The girl did not lose her composure. The first step should be to frighten the enemy. She did it very sweetly. Everyone around was delighted and simply melted from the amount of cuteness per square centimeter. Harold decided that it would be impossible for demons to attack their convoy on the road. Therefore, it would be better to role-play a situation where a stranger approaches the girl and asks her to go to lunch or something. The girl was bored. She said that if anyone came near her, she would definitely kick them between the legs, and that would be the end of it. The knight praised his talented student, but the girl's legs were still short. Finally, she added that if anyone tried to drag her away, she would scream. She would call for help from her loyal knights, and they, as loyal vassals of their mistress, would surely rush to her aid. The Duke was pleased with what the knights had taught his daughter. He realized that they had not wasted their time. But his wife was not sure that the girl had been taught good things. Therefore, it was necessary to limit her contact with the guards. But the Duke thought otherwise. He praised everyone who had helped train his daughter, and he promised them a day of rest. Everyone was free for the day and could go about their business. The Duchess thought her husband was wrong. He completely lost his mind when it came to his beloved daughter, and the knights angered the woman even more. They were supposed to be submissive and obedient, but now, on the contrary, they were starting to fool around and act spoiled. This time they would be accompanied by Charon and Eden. They were quite young knights, with almost no experience in serious combat with the enemy. Everyone fought for a turn to guard the Duke's little daughter. The woman wondered what would happen when Eva grew up. The road seemed long. The girl was very sad. She constantly demanded something. Various toys and household items that aroused her curiosity caught her eye. Her father immediately ordered him to find the toy, although Eva herself said that she just wanted to show how healthy the toy bear and other toys were. This calmed the girl down a little and distracted her from the boring swaying of the carriage. Over time, she got used to it. In her free time, she made a friend with whom she had lunch. A toy bear, the same size as the princess herself, was always with her when she ate. They were together in their dreams, they played together and had fun. In the girl's opinion, this toy bear was a jack of all trades. She was very happy when she had the opportunity to play with him, but he was destined to suffer the same fate as all the other toys. He would simply add to their collection. Ava was afraid of the place they were going to. She kept asking if she would be able to find friends there. And under no circumstances did she want to let go of the teddy bear. It was her last comfort, except for her family, of course. Her brother said that there would be other children in the palace besides them, so she would definitely find friends there to have fun with. The girl was overjoyed at the prospect. She was simply glowing with happiness. Her father's fame was as great as it was burdensome. However, it ensured the Arton family's prosperity and the blessing of all their neighbors and the aristocracy of the empire. Many wanted to stand alongside the Duke and share in his glory. For the sake of a chance benefit, people were ready to resort to treachery, if only it would help them cope with the troubles that had befallen them. Many understood that you couldn't outwit the Duke, so they began to openly show their hostility. And the Duke realized that in such a situation, finding a friend was like searching for a star in a bag of stones. Her father hoped that his daughter's star would not be harmed. Eva, meanwhile, was thinking about the friends she would make here. The Duke hoped that the truth about this world would not break his daughter. The values that the Duke believed in and professed were not the ones that prevailed here. His wife had long been showing signs of serious decline. A stranger came up to the Duke and his family. He talked about how long it had been since they last saw each other. It was hard to remember because it had been so long ago, but he had missed the Duke and his company so much. The man said that he had been holding back with all his strength. Now he had brought his whole family. The stranger emphasized that this place was full of living creatures, unlike the Duke's castle. This was further proof that Hugo had missed him. The man said that he wanted to see the Duke's daughter more than his lordship himself. After all, he had heard about the beauty of his little daughter, and even if he came to visit, she would be hidden from him. The girl curtsied. She greeted Marquis Cassius and wished him magical power and prosperity for his family and all his endeavors, both those already begun and those only planned. The spirit magician was surprised at how quickly the girl had grown. The man introduced his children. He had a charming daughter and a rather grown-up son. The boy's name was Ikrion Cassis. He said he was very pleased to meet them and hoped they would be friends. The boy liked Evie. He took the little girl's hand and leaned in for a kiss. The Marquis's son once again expressed his gratitude for such distinguished guests visiting their estate. However, there was a feeling that one wrong move and a bloodbath would ensue. In the carriage, the Duke said that the girl was not obliged to get close to the descendants of the Marquis of Cassius. His father said that the boy was a real bully. He never let anyone get away without teasing or mocking them in some way. Ava understood who the boy reminded her of. He was like a cunning fox, lying in wait for his next victim. And the fox's voice was so sweet that it immediately captivated her. The girl decided to stay away from him. The Marquis asked his daughter if she would dare to greet the nice guests. The girl looked out from behind her father. She seemed a little scared. The Marquis's daughter was called Lillian. She sincerely said that she hoped they could be friends. This was very important to Eva. Finally, one of the children had offered her sincere friendship. The Marquis said that his daughter was in poor health and therefore had few friends. She rarely saw them. Therefore, the girl would be very happy if the Duke's daughter became her friend. Lillian could guarantee loyalty and devotion. The girl herself was worried whether the Duke's daughter would want to be her friend. Her self-esteem was very low, and she believed that she was not worthy of anyone's friendship. But Eva took her by the hand and said that from now on, they were friends. Lillian's happiness knew no bounds. Finally, someone had told her this honestly. Ava believed that sometimes you don't need a reason to become best friends. After all, when a person is good, everything falls into place. In the future, they would often remember this moment when they found each other. At this amazing moment, their eyes met. They intuitively felt a connection with each other, and from that moment on, they became friends forever. The girls were not mistaken. This moment left a mark on their entire future lives. Finally, the guests and the host sat down at the table. Little Lillian tried in every way to please her new friend, or just take care of her. Lillian called her friend by her first name, but Eva told her to call her by her first name. The Marquis's son watched everything. He said that now he understood what everyone was talking about and who everyone was praising and openly admiring. He felt ashamed of his actions and cruel jokes. The boy was struck by the girl's beautiful golden hair, and her eyes were the color of the ocean, which the little boy liked so much. The girl really gave the impression that she was the favorite of the spirits. She was very different from his sister. The boy compared her to a little star. But Eva's brothers interrupted his thoughts. They told him to stay away from their sister, otherwise he would end up in the realm of spirits much sooner. The Marquis's son assured them that they had nothing to worry about. After all, he liked women older than him. They were better and more interesting than a little child who didn't know how to do anything yet. The boys didn't understand what he was talking about. But Ikrin said that he felt very sorry for the poor guy who would fall in love with their sister. After all, then he would have to deal with both brothers and constant headaches because of it. The boys assured him that they would not let anyone hurt Eva. The Marquis's son did not presume to predict the boys' futures, but it seemed to him that Arkin's life would always hang by a thread. He would become a very strong warrior, conquer many lands, and win many victories. The Marquis's butler invited the guests to the garden, where a wonderful picnic had been prepared for the Duke's family. The picnic was for adults only. The children cried loudly because they wanted to go to the garden. Ava's brothers decided to go fencing, as they hadn't practiced in a long time. They were both delighted that she'd come up with such a good idea. Besides, they needed to distract themselves from the children's cries. The girls decided to stay with Cedric and Arkin. They were curious to watch them spar. Idric wanted to draw attention to himself. He wanted to manipulate his sister by reminding her that she had never left his side in her entire life. The Marquis's son said they could call him if they needed anything. He was always ready to help. But Eva said she could take care of herself. She had learned a few things from the knights who were supposed to protect her. The girls' brothers joined the conversation. They asked that no one take matters into their own hands, but simply let them know if something happened or was not going as planned. There was no need to take things to extremes. The butler could not say anything to the aristocratic children. He simply hoped that their game would not go beyond a normal sparring match. He didn't want the young ladies to see blood on such an unusual day. Lillian still couldn't believe how beautiful her friend was. The girl was truly very beautiful, and the Duchess's daughter's hair shone like gold. God had not deprived this pretty little girl of beauty. One could even envy her. A girl approached the girls on the path. She said her name was Morrigan Karen. She was the daughter of Count Karen. All the other girls began to introduce themselves to her. Eva quickly grew tired of the noise. Eva's new acquaintances invited her to tea when she was near their estates or mansions. The girl was actually very angry that everyone was crowding around her like that. Eva decided to fight off her annoying new acquaintances. A beautiful girl with ash-colored hair stepped out of the crowd of unfamiliar girls and approached Eva. She greeted her politely and without being too pushy. She introduced herself as Ceres, the daughter of the Marquis de Font. She was the first girl who made an impression on Eva. Cerbera reminded her that it was very rude to cause such a commotion. Eva had to calm everyone down and quiet their excitement. The girl said that Eva was still too young to understand etiquette, but Cerbera promised to help her with this. Thus, the girl gained support and a mentor in the form of an older girl, the daughter of a wealthy and respected family. Lessons in etiquette were to begin immediately. If several unfamiliar guests greet you at the same time and try to introduce themselves, you should address each one in turn and listen to them. Evie wondered why she was listening to all this, but Ceres simply remarked that the girl knew very little, but there was no need to be ashamed of that. After all, Evie was still very young. It was rare to meet a well-mannered and decent child at such an age, especially when no one was raising her according to her status. The girl paid no attention to the lecture. She tried to remember where she had heard that strange surname. And then the hall of the imperial palace and her birthday appeared before her eyes. That was the surname of the slimy guy who had tried to anger her father. And then Evie realized that the girl was the spitting image of her father. And the girl thought she had found her savior. But fate was not so kind to her, and this meeting could only lead to new conflicts. Cerberus thought that this girl had taken her place. Previously, everyone admired her Ceres. At that time, she was the daughter of a very influential man who aspired to a position close to the emperor. Everyone talked about her. The aristocracy predicted a great future for her. She was to become the most beautiful woman at all social events. In addition, she was close to all members of the imperial family, perhaps even the wife of the future emperor herself. But almost 2 years ago, when Eva celebrated her first birthday, everyone present at the event saw how beautiful the child of the Duke and his wife was. And that was when Ceres lost hope for her plans. The girl thought about Eva. This child was just an ordinary child. She had no extraordinary abilities. Her body was small and did not even hint at her future figure or beauty in general. And Ceres herself thought that this girl would soon disappear. After all, Artan's family was about to be engulfed by a great misfortune, as her father had told her. He was a bitter enemy of this family, and therefore an irreconcilable fighter against it. And then, when the time was right, Cerberus would rule and control the girl as she saw fit. But Artina's knights could prevent this, as they were sworn to protect their lord at all costs. Rumors were circulating among the capital's aristocracy that these knights had fled the battlefield and abandoned the northern provinces to the mercy of the enemy. In other words, they were ordinary deserters, and everyone around them honored them. Eva heard everything that was said about Ceres's knights. The Duke's daughter had no intention of leaving things as they were. She would never allow the honor of her knights, her protectors, to be tarnished. The girl summoned the power of the water. Naming the spirit Undine, the girl unleashed a part of her primal nature. No one expected the girl to be able to lift the water and direct it at her opponents. The girls looked at Eva in amazement. Amelia looked at her enemy. She had no intention of apologizing for her words about the knights of her house. Although Ceres belonged to one of the most powerful families in the empire, she had no right to speak that way about the Guardians. A dark energy appeared from nowhere. It swirled around the girls. Both were very frightened. Over time, the outlines of people or humanoid creatures emerged from the vortex. The monster slowly rose from the ground. The children were terrified. Everything around them was enveloped in a crimson fog, from which red eyes stared at the children. The boy, Eva's brother, realized that it was Dantalion. And then Eva remembered that demons were divided into 2 categories in their hierarchy. Ordinary demons were very different from their relatives, who belonged to the 72 demons of Lamigedon, who possessed extraordinary power. Ordinary demons served as loyal and obedient servants to the latter. However, the Dantalians did not obey the 72. For this, they were called renegades. They were completely banished from the lands of demons. As a result, they had to feed on leftovers and whatever else was left for them. They had no consciousness. They were incapable of self-reflection. Fear was unknown to them due to their primitiveness. The only thing that motivates them is the desire to tear apart and destroy everything that stands in their way. The monster lunged at young Eva, but an unknown girl from among those standing around pushed the Duke's daughter away, and she did not fall into the creature's clutches, but fell to the ground. Eva did not know whether to be angry or happy, but she was serious. The Undine responded to her call instantly. At the last moment, the girl wondered if the monster would eat her water spirit. Meanwhile, the demon snarled fiercely and made sounds that would have suited a wild beast. The girl cried out loudly for all her loved ones, not forgetting her personal knights, her guardians. She hoped that her fury would give her spirit strength. The monster sensed her intention and power. Eva seemed to be stronger than her opponent, but at the last moment, Cedric came to her aid. He protected the girl from the dark emanation that was moving toward her. Her father asked how his daughter was feeling. Everyone rushed to the girls. The brothers and those around them were very frightened by the enemy's attack. No one expected to encounter a demon right in the middle of the Marquise's lands. He had not come here by chance. To do so, he needed magical cover. Cedric was in command. He ordered everyone to get away from the battlefield and hide in a safe place. The Marquise's son stood in front of Cedric. He ordered him not to interfere, but to simply use his magic to fight the monster. The Duke's son understood that there were about a dozen Dantalians nearby, and they could only fight 2 at most. That meant they needed to call for reinforcements. Otherwise, their resistance would only delay the inevitable, and in the end, they would all die. The Duke came to the rescue. He was surrounded by an aura of golden light. The man seemed to be glowing brightly from within. It seemed that his very appearance was capable of killing demons of various levels, not just chasing them away. Mothers and older women rushed to their children. They still couldn't seriously assess the situation and the danger that awaited their offspring. The children rushed to their mothers with cries. No one understood how the demons had penetrated the Marquis's estate. The Duke looked at his daughter. He couldn't believe his eyes when he saw the bruise on Eva's arm. And at that moment, his mind went blank. He decided to kill all the vile demons, paying no attention to the children and women around him. The Duke was completely overcome by a fighting frenzy. He seemed to have lost his mind and became one of the demons himself. At least his cruelty suggested as much. He shouted and cursed at the attackers, but skillfully cut them down. After the battle, the children and everyone present asked the Duke how it could have happened that demons had broken into the estate of one of the most powerful spirit mages. In their time of civilization and measured peace, it was completely strange and unexpected. The knights came to the aid of their suzerain. They were burning with desire for revenge when they were told that demons had attacked the Duke's little daughter. The Duke could not imagine what his knights would do once the enemies were defeated. After the Duke left to visit the Marquis, unrest reigned among the knights. They could not understand why their master had ordered them to remain at the family estate instead of guarding him on the road. Then one of the knights said that before leaving, Eva had wanted to take her stuffed rabbit with her. They all decided to go to the toy store, but then they remembered the Duke's order not to follow him. Without thinking twice, they decided to simply bring the toy to the walls of the Marquis's estate and throw the rabbit over the fence. In this way, they would not deviate 1 iota from their lord's orders. The knights arrived at the place, but they could not see their mistress anywhere. A feeling of unease and foreboding began to grow among them. Finally, they reached the fence, where they met Charon. The knight couldn't believe that his brothers had decided to disobey the Duke's order. This could have very serious consequences for the entire order of knights. But they were interrupted by someone's scream. It became clear that some kind of trouble had befallen the Duke's family and everyone else present. Then everyone simply beat the demons who had dared to attack the young lady Eva. The knights blamed the other guards of the estate for allowing the attack to happen. The Duke was ashamed of his people, but he blamed no one but himself. After all, he himself did not believe that these fools would obey his orders. Those present were surprised at how quickly the guards dealt with the demons. The girls looked lovingly at Arten's brave knights, who had so gallantly dealt with the monsters. Eva began to cry. She did not recognize the knights. The girl thought that these were not the knights she knew so well. The Duke watched the scene. However, his thoughts were on the question of who had summoned the demons to his best friend's estate. And the demons had been summoned specifically to the garden where the children were playing. In other words, everything had been planned in advance. And this someone knew perfectly well that the children would be separated from the adults, who would go on a picnic separately, leaving the little ones alone. But the main target of the attackers was undoubtedly his precious, talented daughter. The girl clung to the knight and said that they needed to summon Undina. Only a spirit could accurately identify the person who had summoned the cruel, bloodthirsty demons to the garden with the children. Justice had to be restored. The spirit was angry because Eva had called her name very loudly. After calming down a little, the spirit said that she had found the culprit. The spirit pointed to a man in a suit. He denied his guilt. He tried to justify himself by saying that he went to church every week. He asked for priests to be summoned to confirm his words, but no one believed him. The Duke thought about how to punish the man. Communication with demons was punished most severely. It was a crime for which there had been no forgiveness since the last war between humans and demons. All were punished on the spot where they were caught. The sentence was the same: death. Hugo wondered whether to carry out justice immediately or send the culprit to the imperial court. Perhaps the interrogators would have questions for this man, and the emperor himself would be satisfied. The Duke thought it would be a good idea to visit his old friend, so he ordered the guards to arrest Count Malene. A girl approached Hugo. She asked him to hear her out before passing judgment on the count. The girl said that when the demons materialized, Lady Artina tried to step back and hide from the killers. However, Count Malene's daughter pushed the girl right into the demons. Miraculously, Eva flew to the side. The count's daughter denied this. She claimed in all seriousness that the young Lady Artina had simply tripped and fallen accidentally. On the contrary, the girl had tried to push her way to the front to help the frightened little Eva. The spirit declared that the girl was lying. Everyone saw this betrayal clearly. The girl, the count's daughter, deliberately pushed Eva right into the clutches of the demonic creatures. Many spirits are ready to testify to this event. The Duke said that his daughter and father had acted together. The father had summoned the demons to the garden to the children, and his daughter had tried to get rid of Lady Artina. Everyone was overcome with rage and hatred for the traitors who consorted with demons. Later, it became clear that the Marquis had persuaded the Count to betray her. He promised that when Lillian became Empress, Malene would receive the title of Marquis or Duke. The only condition was the murder of Artina's little daughter. The Duke ordered the night guard to take Eva and the other children to a safe place. But then the girl's father added that the guard should leave Lady Defont and Lady Malene behind. They would be taken aside for a private conversation to finally settle everything. The brother led the girl to her room, but Eva could not calm down. For some reason, she felt sorry for the girls who were trying to kill innocent children for their own interests. Her brother assured her that everything would be fine. Archon explained that if he and the other knights had not come to the rescue in time, this conversation might not have taken place. And even if the Duke did not punish the guilty, Archon himself was ready to do so. And even if their father could not control his anger now, he would not be condemned by any of the Empire's inhabitants. After all, there was a clear category of punishment for summoning and cooperating with demons. The knights carried out their master's orders. One of them swung his sword widely and delivered a precise blow that quickly and painlessly ended the lives of the traitors. The Marquis could not watch. Perhaps he felt guilty. The Duke put the sharp end of his sword to the Marquise's throat. Hugo was too angry to make rational decisions. However, now it was a completely different matter. The Marquis de Font was to be punished by beheading without trial. The Marquis asked for an explanation, but first asked for the sword to be removed from his throat. Suddenly, he began to play the strong man, hinting that the Duke had no evidence against him. Therefore, the Duke could not kill him right there and then. Hugo leaned toward the Marquis and said that he should be more cautious in the future. The laws of the Empire did not allow for the immediate execution of a rebellious traitor whose actions posed a threat to those around him. Finally, the Duke added that human life does not always obey the law. Sometimes, terrible things happen. The Marquis said that Hugo would not dare to harm his family. The Duke assured him that this was not the case. The Lord of the Manor asked for forgiveness. He had not kept an eye on his guests and those who had slipped in among them. His actions had endangered the lives of the heirs of the Arton family and many other aristocratic families. The Marquis bowed low to the Duke, but the latter reassured his friend, saying that sooner or later it had to happen. Too many people knew about his daughter's gift, but in the future, such events should not frighten the children or hurt their souls. The next day, Eva and Lillian were playing in the garden. Both were overjoyed to have the opportunity to become such good friends. Ava said she had seen a rabbit in the bushes and suggested they follow it and play. The knights followed the girls. They all suggested catching the rabbit for such pretty girls. Lillian was embarrassed and turned away. Eva told them not to interfere with their game and just wait until they had finished playing. And before the soldiers could change their minds, the girl rushed headlong into the forest where the much-desired and cherished rabbit was hiding. The girl paid no attention to the calls and shouts directed at her. She was completely absorbed in her game. While playing, the girl came across a tall, dark-haired man with an earring. The man asked what the little girl was doing with him and told her to be more careful. The stranger looked suspicious. He asked how she had found him. Eva asked who he was. The man smiled and asked if she really didn't know him. Then the girl realized that she was standing in front of a demon. He was too perfect. The girl asked if he was a devil, but the demon took offense. He asked her never to compare normal demons to devils. It was too insulting to those like him. Besides, he was one of the 72 chief demons. The girl looked at the demon boasting about his position in the hierarchy. Eva thought about how to act. At first glance, the man did not pose a threat to her. She tried hard to remember what she had learned from the knights. The girl remembered how she was supposed to scare the demon. She tried hard to look bad and evil, but the demon didn't fall for her trick. He asked in surprise if she really belonged to the beast people. However, she had no ears. Her claws were also not visible. She had no fur. She also had no tail. The girl said that she was a real lady. The demon asked why she was joking so funny then. The girl said that it was supposed to be a cry of anger and rage. The demon just laughed at her. The girl asked what was so funny, but the demon joked that when demons are afraid, they always laugh very loudly. Ava believed him. She thought the demon was being too serious. The girl got over her first impression and asked the demon his name. The man wanted to answer, but stopped himself. You couldn't just give your name to strangers. You could lose your freedom. No one knew that this was the beginning of a great friendship. Not everyone would understand. Many would be against it. Some would call it treason. After all, many remembered the great war with the demons that had claimed the lives of many inhabitants of the continent. The demon looked closely at the girl. He heard the voices of the guards searching for the lady. The stranger realized that he was looking at the heir to the Arton family. In normal circumstances, he would have simply killed her. But now the situation was completely different. The man knelt before her. He asked her name. The girl replied that she was Amelia. The demon asked if he had heard correctly. The girl was offended that someone dared to spoil her name. The demon asked her to keep their meeting a secret. The man asked her to keep their meeting a secret. And if anyone asked what she was doing, she should say that she saw a rabbit. And the demon melted into thin air, as if nothing had ever happened. The brothers and the guards rushed to Eva. Everyone was frightened by her absence. Her brothers asked her why she had acted so thoughtlessly, especially considering the recent events and the demon's call to kill her. The girl remembered what the demon had asked her to do. She said that she had just chased after a rabbit. She had gone so far that she did not hear them calling her. Ava promised that she would never do that again. The demon was still secretly watching the girl. He saw everything as if from above and a little blurry, but he heard Eva say that the rabbit was very beautiful and that she hoped to see it again. The supreme demon himself came to this place to see the consequences of summoning the Dantalians. This had not happened for a very long time. The last time was before the Great War. Thoughts that it was boring here anyway lulled the demon to sleep. He considered himself very old and ancient, and therefore had the right to rest under a tree in peace and quiet. No one was to disturb him. Agaris, the demon who ranked second in the hierarchy of the Supreme Seven of the 72 demons, remembered his daring encounter with the girl. He immediately sensed that she was no ordinary girl, and they would meet again, without fail. The maids at home were worried about how the girl was feeling. They had heard about her disappearance earlier that day. They were worried that something had happened to her. They didn't want to go into her room because she might be asleep. The maid brought the girl into a room filled with teddy bears. They were all gifts from knights. Eva was angry because there was too little space left for her toys. The girl played with the dolls and suggested that the maid give the toys to children who needed them. But Eva simply did not want them in her room. Although in her heart she thought about the disadvantaged children. A rabbit appeared to the girl in her dream. He took the form of the demon she had seen during the day. Avelia was delighted because she had been thinking about their meeting all day. He said he had decided to visit his friend. The Lord of Water and Spirits watched over the girl as she slept and smiled in her dream. Before meeting this girl, he had only dealt with humans once. And in almost all dimensions, people were selfish and obsessed with something. He was allowed to see the essence of the souls of all living beings because he possessed a spiritual power that permeated the entire universe and all possible dimensions where living beings and nature existed. He often visited the human world out of boredom, but everywhere he saw almost the same thing. People chased after petty material pleasures and could not fully satisfy their growing desires. Most people's souls were black and distorted, but the Lord did not dismiss the fact that he might simply be biased against them. Over the centuries, he had developed a distrust of these creatures. He increasingly looked at the technological progress that had taken over the world. People had become too primitive compared to previous centuries, and it was unusual to meet a girl who believed in the spiritual world and spirits. The girl impressed him with how she rushed to save the water spirit. The idea itself was absurd, but the essence of the deed was important. A person was willing to sacrifice their life not for wealth, but for life itself. And the water spirit asked for help. Spiritual beings have always respected balance and equilibrium. Undine asked for another life for the girl, and in that life, the water spirit wanted to help Avilia.